Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 19. There are going to be many glitches in the system tonight. I am Graham Wilson, the host. You're going to have to do without the dulcet tones of Brian tonight. Tonight with me, I have Lauren, my fellow Scot, and Jamie, our northern boy. How are we?
It feels like a long week already, doesn't it?
Yeah. long weekend. Good weekend though, because obviously Texas won, Cowboys won, Green Bay Packers lost. So it's been a good weekend if nothing else.
Did you go to Wembley, G, with your dad?
No, that's another story. We were cursing the tout gods on Sunday morning. Just unfortunate that the process is so flawed and that so many touts can get tickets. It's amazing how many people they buy tickets at 10 o'clock in the morning on a weekday, and then by 10:02 they realise they can't go, and then they realise that they can sell a ticket for 5 times the profit, so they stick it on one of the ticket sites, which I will not mention because they're the scourge of humanity, and they try and sell £30 seats for £500, and someone's buying them. So yeah, it's a shame that the NFL allow people to profit on these kind of tickets. But it's not the first time. When we went to Lambeau Field, we paid $300 a ticket for $100 seats. So it's not just us; it's around the league. We're talking to two guys who basically they sit next to the two guys seats that we were in. They said that they sell one game, and it pays for half their season ticket. So there you go. Simply because they're the Packers and it's Lambeau Field. So yeah, not that bitter about it or anything.
You just wish you were there to rub it in your dad's face.
Oh, he wasn't pleased. No, he wasn't pleased. Look, I was bigging up the Michael Gallup catch, and I said to him, the Packers should get one of these receivers. I don't know, one of these guys that can actually catch the ball with 2 feet inbounds and hold on to it. You know, it's groundbreaking stuff. It really is. Yeah, what did you guys do for the game?
Yeah, well, watched a bit of the second half of the London game, and then kind of just chill beforehand. Just caught up on the news and stuff. We did a virtual tailgate before the game started. A few of us came on from the Facebook group, and then just kind of kicked back and took the reins on Twitter, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, no, I was pottering around the house. I had it on in the background, the London game. Obviously Packers thought they had it won at halftime, and then I actually had a couple of quid on the Giants, so I did well this weekend with my bets as well, so I'm quite happy. I can eat this week. So yeah, and then obviously it was good staying up it was well worth staying up past midnight for the end of the Cowboys Rams game as well. So
have we all got our victory polos on? I realise I haven't, but
no,
I haven't.
I've got something that goes above my neck, so we'll pass that.
I've got a proper shirt,
Yeah, RJ is enjoying himself on Twitter this week. I don't know if you've noticed, but he's well fired up for the Eagles game. Can't wait for that.
I'm really looking forward to it. If nothing else, I really hope we win, because the following week there's an event up here in Scotland where Hollis Thomas, the former Eagles lineman, is coming across, and he's doing a night in Glasgow, he's doing a night in Edinburgh, and the video for it, he finishes off saying, Dallas sucks and all that. So I'm looking forward to walking in. I've been trying to get one of the Beat by Dallas t-shirts, but it's not going to arrive on time. So, but I'm going to go in wearing Cowboys gear anyway. So win or lose.
Good man.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We'll be jumping straight into news and so, how is Micah Parsons feeling after the efforts on Sunday? Apparently, he feels fine. Do we trust the process? Are we quite? Do we fully expect to see 100% of Micah Parsons on Sunday, or are we holding a little bit back? Do we think?
I think you'd have to actually lock him in a room and it'd need to be a foot wide door, because he tried breaking that down anyway. I think there's no way he's not going to play. How effective he's going to be now? He's saying that there is, the groin's actually eased off and he's not experiencing any pain. Is that just the adrenaline running from a win? If this had been a loss, would it be a bit more painful or something? I don't know, but yeah, I think you'll see him play it. If nothing else, in some description, you'll see him play, and maybe used again primarily as a third down sort of a third down rusher.
Yeah.
But I think in some respects, we've got a fairly tough test this week with a quarterback who is mobile. So you're probably going to see Micah probably more as a linebacker this week. But obviously, I'll leave that till the pre-game show on Thursday night. So.
What did you think of the usage, Jay, when obviously we heard about the injury and we saw him on the bike? What did you think of the third down stuff? Did it give you any anxiety at all?
I think just seeing him on the bike and seeing him, I can't remember which tackle it was. There were one when he came back on, and he kind of looked like he was grimacing a little bit. And I'm thinking, this is just not what we need. It's like we've lost his quarterback. As number two receivers just on his way back, and it's like we've lost his all-pro left tackle for God knows how long the season. It's thinking, please, not the best player on the roster. Please, let's just give us some. And then, like you said, he carried on. But like you say, was that just the adrenaline? Is that just the warrior inside him? That's I'm not going to let my teammates down. Like you say, fingers crossed. It's one of them with like a bit with like Sean Lee, like put him in cotton wool bubble wrap all week. He doesn't need. We've seen him, though. He doesn't need to practice. Just let him chill. Let him just watch film on the Sheagles, and then let him kind of get into the Hulk mode on Sunday night, Monday morning. What it'll be for us.
I mean, certainly the Lions always hungry, and I think they would have to, like you said, Ron, they would have to cage him to keep him off the field against the Eagles. It's going to be a huge game for both defensive units, I think, and like you guys are saying, I just hope he shakes it off. And it's not like he's got 10 years worth of injury concerns to hamper him. I think. Hopefully we'll see 100% of Micah Parsons. Talking of 100%, Dak Prescott's thumb. Now I've been hearing, I don't know if you guys have been hearing, but I've been hearing that he's been desperate to shake everybody's hand and show them how strong his grip is. What do we think of Dak throwing the ball again? Encouraging, but is it a little too early?
Wasn't that mentioned in the commentary at some point?
Yeah.
Saying when Dak came and he was like, the first thing he said to people was, how strong do you think the grip is? So, yeah, it's one of them. Yeah. And I got a bit of commenting last week, but it's just like it's one of them. And it kind of felt like the Romo situation when Romo went down and Dak took the place. But he's a 40 million quarterback, but we're 4-1. Do you change it now and put him back in, or do you play Cooper Rush for however long, and then if the Eagles kind of start getting away with it on the weekend, do you throw him in?
I think you could definitely have him sitting on the bench and active for this game. But I mean, we're ahead of the game in where we thought we'd be, at this point in the season. I mean, I think I had us at 3-2, possibly at worst case scenario 2-3, coming into this week, and to do it without Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush isn't, the main thing for Cooper Rush is he's not turning the ball over, he's not making mistakes. Now his receivers aren't helping him out, and we'll get on to that in a bit. But it's interesting. One of the Deep Blue documentaries this year was about the 1991 season, where Steve Berline had the hot hand, came in, and Steve Berline obviously had been with the Raiders before, and he won his first 5 starts with the Cowboys as well. And then come the playoff game, you benched him and brought Troy Aikman in for the Detroit game, and Troy wasn't ready. And that was the end of the postseason and what have you. But so there's a bit of a lesson to learn from that as far as I'm concerned. So, why not wait until you've got a relatively meaningless game against either the Lions or the Bears, and just see what Cooper Rush can do. This defense should keep us in the game. They've done it. They've done it so far this season. They kept us in every single game. This is the best defensive performance since 1972, way back in the days of the original Doomsday defense. In that they've only allowed 1 touchdown per game, and no team's got more than 20 points against us. So, the offense has at least proved it can, or the team has at least proved that we can score 20 points week in, week out, give or take the first game of the season. I think you stick with the hot hand and go with Cooper Rush, unless Dak actually absolutely lights it up this week in practice.
Jay, what do you think? Do we roll with Coop, or do we force? Not force. Force is a bit of a strong word, but do we ask Dak to come back straight away?
I'm having this feeling of I've got a feeling Jerry's going to have a say in this one. And apparently, by all accounts, years ago on it that when Dak went on that great run when he took over when Tony was injured, and apparently Jerry wanted Tony back in the team, and Jason Garrett kind of went no. I've got to stick with the hot hand, and there's no disrespect to Dak, and I think Dak would probably look at it the same. That it's the team without Dak this year is 4-0. I know we're coming up against arguably, you could probably say, the most explosive offense this coming week, but they've found a little bit of rhythm and kind of have got a little bit of flow going. Cooper Rush isn't going to be asked to open the floodgates. He's going to be asked to manage the game well. And if anything, I think he deserves it. And I just think with how it's going, we might be sitting here next week and be saying something different if we stick with him and we get completely blown out by that lot. And saying, well, we should have put Dak in, but I'm with Lon. I think you've got to stick with it at a minute, just for the fact that this team's on a 4-game winning streak. Why break it? As they say, what is it? Don't change what's not broken.
Yep, absolutely. I like it. I think it would be tough to ask Dak to come in against a good defense straight off the bat when you consider that Cooper Rush has done very, very little wrong. I think it would be a completely different story if Rush had 1-2 lost to. For instance, like if we were sitting at a 3-2 or a 2-3, that's different. But there's a rhythm, there's a rhythm, and why break the rhythm? Anyway, we're starting to touch on the offense, so let's move on to Dalton Schultz now. TV viewers may have seen Dalton Schultz slam his helmet into the turf at some point. BleachersReport.com is reporting that Schultz is likely to play versus the Eagles. What do we make of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he's talking about playing. I mean, there's an announcement today that we've signed another tight end in the practice squad, so perhaps they're preparing for not having him, and then it's further competition for Sean McKeon. You've got to wonder about the effectiveness. I mean, he only played 10 plays there on Sunday. You need to get, if he's going to be your, is he trying to stay in the game because obviously he's seen these young whippersnappers like Hendershot and Ferguson starting behind him playing well, and he's watching, the gamble that he took on signing the contract tender. Is that not paying off, and he's maybe, he's needing to put the tape together to audition for a job next year. And is this forcing him to play while he's not 100%? But we need all 53, all the active guys that are on the roster on a Sunday. You need all of them to play. So if there is an injury concern, I think you should really rest him up and what have you. But ultimately, he's got to prove that he can go this week in practice. So,
Jamie, what's your 2023 take on Dalton Schultz? Is the reputation damaged at the minute?
Trying to work out how to put this politely. Everyone knew my thoughts on the re-signing for this year. There's not, in my opinion, there's not many $11 million tight ends in this league. Dalton Schultz is definitely not one of them. That's no disrespect to the guy. As a person, I'm sure he's a great person off the field. I just don't think he's done anything in his career to warrant an $11 million contract for this year anyway. I've seen, I know it's only been 5 weeks, and the guys are still kind of finding the feet in the league, but with what we've seen so far of Ferguson and Hendershot, I would be more than comfortable going into 2023 with those two as our combined starting tight ends and letting Schultz walk. Because if he's on $11 million this year, regardless of how he plays, he's going to command a massive contract, and you've got to think further down the line of who's coming up. You've at some point you're going to have to relook at Diggs, because Diggs is going to come up in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb's going to come up again in the next couple of years. Then you've got to look at, there's what, I know he's only his second year, but then eventually there's going to be Parsons down the line.
Yeah.
So it's like that thing, innit? It's 6 of one, half and does another. I just don't think. Terence Steele will want paid soon enough if he's going to play right tackle.
Yep,
exactly. And then you're looking at how this defensive line is playing at the minute as well. Some of these guys are going to command a big contract coming off, because I do. It's the best front four group in the league at the minute. So there's some of these guys, and then you're looking at the back end of it. There's Leighton Van Der Esch. Does he get another contract next year, or extension, or whatever? However you want to look at it. So you've got to look at the whole picture, and I just don't think that, especially what we've been paying on offensive players. I mean, we're paying through the nose for Dak, who deserved it. That's nothing. We've got us on the hook for a lot of money for Zeke. Gallup's on quite a bit of money. So do you pay another offensive weapon like that doesn't do enough in a game to warrant $11 million? I mean, he's not a Jason Witten kind of tight end that racks up a lot of yards and is a threat every single down he plays. I would let him walk, and let's see what we've got in these two guys that have shown some great potential so far in the first 5 weeks of this season.
Speaking of contracts, going to bring up this not question but comment from Joe. Can you imagine having a $2 million quarterback starting and a $40 million quarterback sitting on the bench? Does this come into play on Sunday? And are we basically overlooking the fact that Dak is the man?
You know, I'm just quickly going to do. I can imagine it because we lived it. We lived it 5 years ago now.
Yep.
But I just think Jerry might put his foot down a little bit more this time than maybe last time.
I think the thing is, I mean, you know, the fact that we're in the position we're in, Jerry's maybe going to say, look, you know, we don't need to rush Dak back. But I think ultimately when Dak is 100%, there is no question this is his team. That, you know, the whole thing with Romo was actually, Romo didn't, you know, the only guys that Romo actually had on his side were Witten and Des Bryant. And both actually, as Dak started playing and playing well, Witten and Des Bryant were actually saying, look, don't move away from, don't go back to Tony unless there's an injury. Stick with Dak. Dak is playing lights out, and, you know, that's what you need to do. And I think, you know, you can't say that Cooper Rush has done a steady job, but he hasn't set this offense on fire. You know, he has the guys playing for him. He's actually going in. He's doing exactly the same thing as Dak does. He's not trying to be anything else other than Cooper Rush, and he's trying to guide this offense as best he can. But, you know, ultimately he knows it's not his job. What he's done now is he's set himself up to be the equivalent of, who is it, Chase Daniels, who, you know, has a long-term career as a bench warmer, clipboard holder. He's now got his own, you know, he's appearing on, I think it's ESPN or something like that. He's got a TV deal where he appears one day a week, a bit like Micah Parsons is on First Take. You know, so he's set himself up. And I mean, there will be, you know, we maybe do need to think about signing him to a club before the end of the season if this continues, because, you know, there will be somebody who needs a quarterback, Commanders.
We could do a whole show on that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rivera, okay, he's recanted a little, but, you know, he was asked yesterday what's the difference between the Commanders and the other three teams in the NFC East, and, you know, he said it's quarterback play. So, you know, and they're paying Prince Harry to quarterback, you know, so, and he's not coming up with the goods. So,
right, okay, I think we've dabbled around the news and updates enough. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, shall we? Let's talk Cooper Rush and this amazing Dallas Cowboys defense. They just seem to get the job done. Who wants to take it away with their initial thoughts on the offense?
Tumbleweed silence moment.
I think this offense, I mean, again, as we've been saying there with Cooper Rush, that, you know, it's been a steady offense. We're actually seeing a slight evolution in Kellen Moore's game planning as well. I think whether that's Mike McCarthy's, you know, had that steadying input, but I mean, this weekend, I think there was a stat up at least halfway through the fourth quarter where it was showing that we'd gone 60% run, 40% pass.
Yep.
You know, Cooper Rush only attempted, what was it, 16 passes, 17 passes. It got sacked a couple of times, obviously. Both times that he got sacked, Pollard was the blocking back, which, you know, for anybody who says that Pollard is, Pollard should be getting more snaps than Zeke, then there's your counterpoint straight away. But we're actually seeing we're seeing a relatively good game plan that's been put in, and we're not. Every time so far a team has scored against us to go up, we've gone back and answered on that next drive. That the TD that we gave up to Cooper Kupp, that could have been a backbreaker. I think Brian actually came on the group chat that night and said, "Oh, this is it, guys. We're gonna get embarrassed in the second half, or we're gonna get embarrassed after this." And the Cowboys offense said, "Wait a minute, no."
Calm.
And marched down the field, got to 43-yard line, and Pollard took it away from there. And then, from that point on, the Rams weren't in the game at all. So, and the main thing is that we were still, even when they knew that we were going to be running the ball in the third and fourth quarter to salt this game away, the Rams couldn't stop us. And I think again this offensive line, it had its difficulties. I mean, Zach Martin going up against Aaron Donald on the first play, Zach Martin couldn't sit down on Aaron Donald, so he was getting pushed back into Cooper Rush's face, and Cooper Rush's first attempt there was an incomplete hop off the ground. Tyler Smith, then Aaron Donald went across and picked on Tyler Smith for a bit. The only one that, again, interestingly, the one that he had a bit of trouble with was Connor McGovern. So somebody called Connor seems to be his kryptonite.
So Jay, Cooper Rush has beaten both Super Bowl finalists. Explain that to me.
I've got a good mind to ask him what the lottery numbers this week are. It's like with them, isn't it? It's like it's raining millions of dollars through it, and it's going the right way. And I think we're at some point in the game, I mean towards the end, when maybe midway through the fourth quarter, there was a stat that absolutely astonished me, and I sat there and I was like, and it was Cooper Rush had not even thrown for 100 yards, and I was like, if you looked at I think did he end up with 101 yards in total?
102.
Yeah, 102.
10 completions, 102 yards.
And if you would have just said that stat line alone, and then compared it to Matt Stafford, I think did Matt Stafford throw for 308, 180 through, you would have thought that the Cowboys got absolutely pulverized.
That's that against the Super Bowl holders.
Yeah. And yeah, and it goes back to that thing that it's that they're using the right parts of the playbook for what Cooper Rush can do. Got to show props to Tony Pollard. I always loved the pick when we picked him up originally in the draft, but it just seems to be getting better week on week, year after year. And like we say, you mentioned, that a little bit at times Tyler Smith struggled. He's had a good year so far, and to be fair, he's probably the best defensive tackle in the league he was up against this week. And like I said, he was moving around a bit. So you can allow him, you can let him off for that one. Do you know what I mean? Probably a bad game against someone like an Aaron Donald is going to be perfect for him. Do you know what I mean? It's to see where he can kind of measure where he's at already to where he needs to be, to get to kind of a Tyron Smith kind of a level of a left tackle. So it was definitely impressive. I just think we could have blown them out the other day, just for the fact that we know what the Rams are like. We know that Stafford's a quality quarterback. Cooper Kupp's a quality wide receiver. They've got a decent offensive line. Got an half-decent running game. The Cowboys could have been 15-0 up with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and we would have all still been sat there thinking, we're going to blow this. Something's going to happen. It's the Cowboys' way. But yeah, and like Lon said, I mean, that big touchdown for for Cooper Kupp could have broken his backs, and it had a bit of a reminiscence for me of, I think it was at the Patriots last year, wasn't it, when the Patriots scored that touchdown right towards the end, and it was like, oh, this is going to kill us, and then we ended up coming back and winning it, and it's good to see that kind of the team don't let these big players now affect them in a massive way, and they just sit there and go, do you know what, we've given up a score, the offense then go, right, let's roll our sleeves up, the defense has done as well, done us proud so far this game, let's go on and get some more points on the board, and then backs that up with the comment that we just seen from Dijon. I mean, the defense then went and completely shut them out the second half. So what was probably a nervy second half for us all ended up not even being half as nervy as it needed to be, just for the fact that the defense were like, we've got this. And I think we've all said it the last few weeks that this Cowboys defense doesn't get enough credit and that it deserves, but not saying that they're going to be as good, but it was was it the 93 defense? It was the best in the league and never got any Pro Bowl acknowledgements kind of thing. To let it go that way, because then they're just going to play with a chip on the shoulder. And same with the offense. Not a lot of people talk about the offense. They'll play with a chip, and that's probably the most dangerous time to play this team, especially when so many people are underrated. As everyone's, I think Mike that posted in the group, we're at 12 at the NFL.com. Analysts were asked to pick the winner for the game, and only 1 out of 12 picked the Cowboys. Like you say, write us off at your peril, because we'll just come back and bite you in the proverbial backside.
So, on the running game, question for the both of you: which running back is more important to the Cowboys offense right now?
It depends on how you look at it, don't you? In terms of getting a lot of yards, Tony Pollard, but then who's the better blocker? Like you say, the 2 times that he got sacked, Cooper Rush this weekend, came while Tony Pollard was on the field. It's hard because I really like Zeke, and just it's just and we started. And because I like to play devil's advocate sometimes. Are we seeing, when I say the decline of Zeke, are we finally seeing all this time, because he never missed a game in college? Apart from suspension, he's not really missed any game time in the NFL. Are we finally starting to see Zeke slow down a little bit, or the Cowboys being a bit more, what's the word, conservative with how they use Zeke? Because we're not seeing those almighty bursts that we used to see, like some of the, like, look at the big one that Tony Pollard put on at the weekend. We're usually seeing Zeke play that. Is it just now more defensive backs and defensive linemen are a bit more accustomed to how Zeke plays, and because Tony Pollard's now coming out of his shell a little bit more, that's why we're seeing him getting a lot more yards, because the other teams don't know how to defend against him. I don't know. I don't want to badmouth Zeke.
It's a tough one. That's exactly why I asked. Lauren, if Jamie sits on this fence any longer, he's going to tear himself in two. So you go and answer the question.
I think you still need Zeke, and I think you need Zeke more than you need Pollard. I think the fact that Zeke is starting and Zeke is knocking out, the initial 5 or 6 runs or so and hammering that defense. I mean, he is getting the dirty yards, and then you're bringing on Pollard as a change of pace back, much like you go back to when Parcells was head coach here, and you had guys like Marion Barber, Felix Jones, Julius Jones, and what have you. These guys complemented each other. You had Marion Barber, who could slam it right up the middle, and then you brought in one of the change of pace backs, and he was able to scamper for the long TD. I don't, and I mean, even the next play after the next run after Pollard's run, Zeke got 11, 12 yards on effectively the same play up the middle. Yes, Zeke doesn't have the same capabilities that he probably did back in 2016. You know, everybody compares him to 2016 Zeke, and unfortunately he's had too many carries since then. You know, but he is still probably the better back as far as I'm concerned in terms of an all-rounder that, you know, we need him in there protecting on pass protection, if nothing else. And, you know, the main thing is, you could, you know, everybody bags on Zeke because he held out for that contract. And I think that's maybe bad advice by his agent or whatever, but, you know, the atmosphere that he has in this team, or he's creating in this team, he's not saying it's all about me. He's quite happy with what Pollard's doing. He's quite happy to be splitting the time with Pollard because he knows that, you know, he's going to get things off. Things are going to open up for him. Things are going to open up for Pollard. And it's, you know, he's not getting wound down into the ground so that, you know, he is still fresh at the end of the game. You know, and Mike McCarthy's come out and said that, you know, he wants to see our backs have 30 touches a game, you know, and that's supposedly that's showing that we're committing to the ground game a bit better and not putting it into the quarterback's hands. And so far it's working for us. So
I would on this question, I would say that never underestimate the value of a running back that can punch in the last 3 yards to get a first down. It looks easy on TV, but you can bet your bottom dollar. I've obviously never played kitted football, and I know how difficult it is. Just by the amount of situations I've watched where teams haven't been able to punch in the last 3 yards, and they have to punt the ball away, and it's so difficult to get those last 3 yards because everybody on the field knows exactly what's going to happen. The reason I raised the question is Zeke hasn't had a 100-yard game. Does that concern us at all?
I don't think so. I mean, he's still actually on pace for, you know, and especially with the 17 games this season, you know, he's still on pace for 1,000 yards. And I mean, that's what, you know, some of these 1,000-yard rushers can be, you know, 150 one week and then 10 yards next week because they're absolutely, you know, the defense is keying in on him. If Zeke's consistently running up 70 yards a game, you know, I'd rather have that than a 200-yard game and then, you know, the equivalent of what Denver a couple of years ago where he only got 8 yards on 19 carries or something like that. So, you know, it's better to be consistent and rack up the yards under the radar, as it were, than, you know, yes, we'd love him to have 100 yards every single week and lead the league with 1,700 yards a season. But no, that's, you know, that's when you can't touching the ball 20 times a game and guys are jumping on top of you, and then you factor in the pass protection as well. You know, that's a hell of a lot to put on one man's shoulders.
Okay, Jay. Here's a fantasy. Oh, you're on mute, Jay.
Don't know why we're on mute there, but now we're just going to touch as well, just with Lauren saying about, I mean, he's consistent. If you look back through his career in the NFL on the ground, aside from the season where he got the suspension, he's had 1,000 yards every year, at least 1,000 yards on the ground. And I think the year that he didn't, I'm probably quoting it wrong, but I think it was something about 940 yards or something daft like that. So he's consistent, like I say, he's consistent. That's the one good thing about Zeke. And he's still young. That's the strangest thing out of it all. He came into the league so young anyway, but I think it helps because the first few years as well in the league, and no disrespect to the running backs he had behind him, but it was just solely focused on Zeke. It was kind of guys that was just kind of backing up because we needed a second, third running back. Whereas now we've got what feels like a legitimate number 2 running back that you don't have to put Zeke in every single down, or if you've got on the field, you don't always have to give it to Zeke because you know that Pollard can now burst up the middle like Zeke can, whereas you always used to see Pollard busting it on the outside. So that's probably only going to benefit the Cowboys a lot more because we're going to get more quality downs out of Zeke, and you're going to get more. You might get an extra year or two out of him, depending on if he sticks around with the Cowboys for the rest of his career. So it only helps us anyway. So just keep feeding him, and like I say, just if he's 50 yards a game, it's 50 yards a game because he offers so much more in the pass protection and also even on the running in the passing game as well. So he's not just a one trick pony, is he?
So moving on to the offensive line, talk to me about Tyler Smith's game. I mean, obviously you're moving a great defensive line all over the place. Donald to the defensive end, sticking him in at D tackle. What do we think of Tyler Smith's performance? Did we give him a pass on the holding penalty and so on? Because it's Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, I always remember there was a video I used to watch that it was John Madden and explaining football, and Art Shell, I think, was once quoted on that video that said, if it's a choice between me, the guy getting to the quarterback and my quarterback ending up in hospital, or a 10-yard penalty, I'll take the 10-yard penalty all the time. Now, Aaron Donald is somebody who is a difference maker. And, as I said earlier, he gave problems to just about everybody on that offensive line. They didn't just play him one side. They played him over Zach Martin first play. Zach Martin couldn't sit down on him. Put him in front of Tyler Biadasz. Biadasz had help, but, still struggled there. Put him over Connor McGovern. Connor McGovern actually played him well because he's a bit of a mauler. But Tyler Smith, I mean, it was 2 sacks that he gave up from the holding penalties and what have you. He's still, he's got the right attitude. He's coming off. He wasn't flinging helmets saying, "Oh, I messed up" and all this sort of stuff. He calmly went over. Jason Peters was standing on the sideline. Jason Peters started trying to give him tips. He's listening to Jason Peters. He's taking these in, and the rest of the time, when Donald wasn't on top of it, wasn't over him, you weren't hearing anything about Tyler Smith. He wasn't making the mistakes. He will learn from this. He will watch the video. He will watch the game tape and say, right, okay, the next time I'm facing them, this is what he tends to do. And it's a way of sharpening his technique. And I think the Dallas front office have actually lucked out again with a first round draft pick that nobody wanted. Nobody graded as a first round draft pick, much like Travis Frederick. And this guy's actually, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not certainly on the all rookie team. I'd be surprised if he actually isn't an alternate for the, possibly the Pro Bowl this year as well. It's too early to say, but I mean, the play that he has made this first 5 games after, spending most of the training camp being a backup guard and not taking any snaps at tackle. We've thrown him in, and he's more than swimming. He's not sinking at all. So
yeah, I mean, Aaron Donald, like you say, year in year out, is consistently the best, if not one of the top 2 defensive tackles in the league. He makes the best defensive lineman look average at times. So coming up against a rookie that's still finding his feet, like you're saying, it's obviously he's still trying to. I mean, he's kind of doing it like on his own, not on his own as such, but if you know what I mean, in terms of the plan, obviously all along was for him to play inside Tyron Smith and gain some experience playing alongside that kind of player. And he's out there on his own, and he's getting inconsistency of who his left guard is at the minute, because Peters is coming in now. Peters is injured, and it's kind of like you've got to give the kid time. So, like you say, you can give him a pass on that. He's probably, and no disrespect, he's not going to come up. He's not going to come up against a better interior defensive player this year. So, yeah, do you know what I mean? It's a good test of where he is. Like I say, he'll look back at it and go, right, yeah, this is where I messed up on a few plays. This is where I can improve on. And I think we'll see a different Tyler Smith this week against another good, solid, if not top 5 defensive front.
So, next question on the offense. Was the best part of the offense the fact that we didn't turn the ball over on Sunday?
Do you know,
there were a couple of fumbles, but we never actually turned the ball over. Is that underrated?
It's a surprising one in the sense of it's not spoken much because of the plays that we had, the way that we managed the game really well. So sometimes you don't see that, and that's a positive stat. It's one of them stats you want to come away with every week of you didn't turn the ball over, so you were doing something right, or at least you weren't forcing it too much and getting caught out and getting burned from it. So I would say it probably is, yeah. But apart from the Gallup toe grab, that was typical Gallup. I mean, you can guarantee nearly one of them a game off him. So yeah, that was definitely a positive for me. It's a step in the right direction, and then not to be knocking back, but it's just another one of them that it shows Cooper Rush, and I say Cooper Coupland. Cooper Rush is doing the right things, and that's why you need to kind of just roll with it at the minute. And if the Cowboys get blown out, then you sit there and say, well, you know what? Yeah, we maybe should have changed it. But then if you put Dak in and we lose, and it's like, well, we're on a 4-game winning streak. So stick with the guy that's not making the mistakes at the minute. And that's not saying Dak's crap, because he's not. But it's just, yeah, keep it going. The offense it's not electric, but it's not boring either.
So, Lauren, if you take that stat and combine it with the huge reduction in penalties, that sounds to me like winning football at the minute.
It is, and I mean, we've certainly been lucky with the turnovers. We've been very lucky because we haven't had any turnovers, thanks to the fact that there was alert play there at the weekend with Tyler Smith jumping on the ball when Cooper Rush did fumble it. You had the 2 potential interceptions in the Commanders game that were wiped out because the Commanders defensive backs were holding. We have had we have had instances, and you can only write that out so many times. At some point we're probably due a hex game, and hopefully it's not this weekend, sort of thing. But certainly the penalties have been, again, we were lambasting them in week 1 after the racking up 11 penalties. The penalties this year haven't been killer. I mean, I think the Rams actually committed more penalties. But again, one of the things is Micah Parsons actually put something out this week that, he was getting held, something worse. I mean, Jason Ferguson or Ferguson's penalty for holding, he had the guy by the shoulder pad, and you could see the shoulder pad coming up. Micah Parsons had that against him as well, and was practically on his, bending over like that, and nothing was called. And this is something that the officiating this week, you saw the 2 questionable roughing the passer calls in other games this week. The Brady call, and last night there was a call against who was it? Derek Carr got sacked, and the guy landed on top of him. Wasn't a case of actually throwing himself on it suplex style or dropping the people's elbow style, but they called roughing the passer on those. There needs to be something where the booth up by in the stadium can actually call down and say, wait a minute, you called a penalty for that. No, and override that. But and at least try and have some standardization across the league, because as if you talk to Brian Broaddus or you listen to Brian Broaddus, he will always say, right, the refs that we've got for this game, the tendencies are this, and this. So you have to watch out for holding here or whatever. And you shouldn't be having to do that. You should be having to say, right, okay, just don't hold anyway, or whatever, or don't focus on this or whatever. So it would be great.
The referee's worst enemy is social media, really, isn't it? Because like you can have one situation happen in your game and a completely different situation happen in another game. You only have to jump on Game Pass or YouTube, and you can share the two plays to your heart's content. So I
think players are getting frustrated about it now, because I think Micah Parsons even spoke out about it, didn't he? And there was one where I don't know which Rams play it was, but literally it looks like he's clotheslining him. It's obviously the end of the hold. It's like, why are the quarterbacks getting protected so much? And it goes to show how protected they are. If you just look at the one in the Bucs game this weekend, that was horrendous. There was nothing wrong with it. I think even Brady was embarrassed at the fact that the ref called roughing the passer. It's like, well, you've got to find this consistency of, well, if you're going to protect the quarterbacks like this and the linemen, then you've got to look at how they're holding on to the defensive players, because some of them were just absolutely shocking that he missed. And I think the one consistent thing about referees is that they're inconsistent in the NFL, and that's
today's game. That's today's game. When people say the league, what they really mean is the 32 owners. And the 32 owners want their star quarterback playing on Sundays. And, that's the way the officiating's going. I shared a video in our private chat this afternoon that I can't remember the defensive player, but he removed Tom Brady's helmet. And Tom Brady's going to ground, and the guy removes his helmet in the tackle. Referees didn't bat an eyelid. If you tackle a player the way Brady was tackled on that play in today's game, you're ejected out of the game. He's on his way down, and the helmet comes off of Brady and flies off the screen. It's a huge hit. Tom Brady bounced up, as if, let's go on, next play kind of stuff. Different days.
Even that comment there from Jason about it. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more players pulled out of the game, and I know it's going off a tangent a little bit, but look at Teddy Bridgewater. Apparently he passed his HIA, but it was one of the spotters in the crowd saying, no, something doesn't seem right. So I think we're going to see a lot more players pulled out of games now for what might seem the littlest bit of contact. It's for some of the stuff that they're trying to rid the game of. Like saying, you don't want to see players get injured, and it's especially the two was just horrendous when you saw on the floor. Like saying, it kind of, so a lot of people say, like he'd had a stroke because he just kind of all tensed up, and so I think it's you. I know you've got to find that fine balance, but also you've got to think, well, do you know what? That's just taking the piss, so to speak, in it, in terms of what do you class as is roughing a player up, and what's just blatant. I use cheating loose-tongued, but you get what I mean. It's blatantly stopping the player getting through and doing what you can, or blatantly hurting a player. You've got to find that fine line, and they've got to get out of it quick, because games will spiral out of control, and that's what you don't want, especially with how entertaining and how many fewer games you get in this. You want to be talking about good players, not refereeing decisions every week.
Yeah.
So speaking of entertaining, number 13, Twinkle Toes is back. Lauren, talk to us about that catch. We all know the catch I'm talking about.
That was just fantastic, that catch. I mean, he was getting pushed out of bounds, but he had the wherewithal to actually drag his foot, get the dust or get the bits of rubber flying up in the air as well, and having the proof, and it was quite astute of the officials to actually rule it in on the sideline, and and the obviously commentators are going, "Oh, the Cowboys better run this play quickly," and then they show you the replay. Actually, no, they can take their time because there's no doubt about it being. Gallup's always good for that. I mean, you talk about that's the one thing Gallup's always been good at is the sideline catches, and especially, I mean, I think the sideline catches in SoFi Stadium, he seems to have a penchant for doing it there as well.
I mean, Jay, talk to us about the quality of the throw from Cooper Rush, because he puts that in a position where only Michael Gallup can go and get it, and yet again Michael Gallup comes down with the ball.
It's just another tick on Cooper Rush for the job that he's been doing. Like I say, it's all good and well just flinging it, but I mean, getting it to a point, like you say, where Michael Gallup can get there, but also get it in such a tight window. There's not many quarterbacks that could make that throw. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the league, but you've got to trust him as well. And clearly, Kellen Moore trusts that play. I think we might, if we see him this week, I think you might see that a little bit more, just because he's so effective. Like you say, there's not many receivers that can bring that kind of pass in. So play to his strengths. The running game's been all right, but yeah, I mean, target Michael Gallup on these tight sideline for us, because quarterback can throw them, and like you say, our twinkle toes can get in and get it down.
Now, just to bring him back down to earth, though, I mean, the drop that he had on third down, I mean, that was Scott Cooper, who used to play for the Claymores, he always said that if he got his hands on the ball, if he got his hands on the ball and the ball fell to the ground, it was his fault. And I mean, that pass from Cooper Rush, I think it maybe got tapped a little as he threw it, because it certainly wasn't the tightest spiral. It was a bit of a banana ball. But I mean, Michael Gallup got his hands on it and just dropped it. CD Lamb had a similar one later on in the game as well.
Yeah,
you can't have those from those guys. Yeah. Make the circus catches, but you got to work it. You got to actually make those catches as well. And I mean, they actually killed two drives that, you talk about the potential that we had to blow that game out of the water. It could have been a worse scoreline for our opposition. They could have been absolutely mauled by us. But it's little things like that just shows that our offense isn't taking over quite correctly. There's a cylinder out of place or whatever. If you're likening it to a car, it's not, the timing's not right there.
Do you know, we got to nearly an hour before we had to bring that up. we nearly got through the show, and damn you.
Listen, Jay, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. We've got to stay balanced on this show. We can get carried away like our friends in Philadelphia, but we stay balanced and we stay positive. So let me ask you this question: are the drops the difference between being Cowboys number 1 receiver and Cowboys number 2 receiver? And are we any closer to finding out who the number 1 receiver is? Because to me, the concentration drops are the difference. Because particularly in the CD Lamb one, he turns upfield before that ball's secured. That's why the ball comes out. And I call that concentration drops.
If anything, I don't want to see any of those kind of drops from wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. I'd allow in some capacity, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 and 5 to make them kind of catches. But that's what those kind of catches are what you're paying big money for them to do. And so they're essentially a cardinal sin for me, because let's say you're paying the big bucks for your top 2 receivers to make those kind of grabs. Those are the in some aspects are the catches that could win you a game or lose you a game or kill a drive. So they've got to be better in them two, especially because we know especially Gallup, just because he's been around in the league a little bit more. We know he's got some trusty hands, and CD Lamb is getting that way. If he wants to be the number 1 receiver, he can't be making them mistakes.
Okay, so this one for Lauren then. You're that team in Philadelphia's D coordinator. Who's your double coverage?
I think Lamb has proved that he can still do the damage over the middle, which, the last 2 weeks we've hit Lamb on a crosser across the middle, and he's got, he's managed to get a first down. He's got 10, 15 yards as well. And it does seem to be a go-to play. I mean, we did that to get us into field goal position for that final field goal as well on third down and long. Lamb came up a yard short. Now, there's been a bit of criticism that he should have maybe put his body on the line and gone, and knowing he was going to get hit there, he should have gone for that extra yard. And kept the drive alive, and but I think a lot of people didn't understand why we went for the field goal there instead of going for it on 4th and 1. But the thing is, if you don't make it on 4th and 1, then you're ahead by 9 points. That's a field goal and a touchdown for the Rams. And the Rams were driving again in those last. They got the ball back, and it was only because it got snuffed out by an interception by Malik Hooker on that last drive that it could quite easily have gone the other way. You give up another touchdown, and then all they need to do is get 30, 40 yards off the kick and kick a field goal, and they're up by a point or whatever. So I certainly think yes, you can say that Lamb should have got that extra yard, but play safe with the ball, and I think the Cowboys were right to go with that field goal in the last. Now, and thankfully, after the disastrous initial long snap in the game, there wasn't any real sort of long snap deficiencies throughout the game. And there is a slight concern now that Brian Anger has shanked 2 punts this year. But other than that, I think we've done well with this game. So continue down this road, and obviously it will eventually click in properly, I think. So, and maybe it is that Gallup's only 2 games back, and he was in the pitch camp last week. He needs to pick up his game a little bit, and that will take some of the pressure off Lamb as well. So that will allow Lamb to further develop into the number 1 role.
Are we a little bit concerned about Jalen Tolbert?
I don't think so. I don't think I am, to be honest. I mean, yeah, okay, we gave up a 3rd round draft pick for him. Some people were saying he should have gone in the 2nd round and we should have taken Sam Williams in the 3rd round, but we're getting something out of Sam Williams, so that's justified. 3rd round picks, yeah, they're meant to contribute straight away, but I think just the fact that we got Gallup back, that took him off the field. The receivers behind him are all playing a role on special teams. Jalen Tolbert hasn't done anything of that in college, and I don't think he did a hell of a lot of that in high school football as well. So, that's something that you've got to get you've got to have an experience of it to then be able to play it in practice and then get the coaches' eye to, it would be all different if we hadn't signed Kevonte Turpin. Jalen Tolbert was looking at being the punt returner, so he would have been active then if we hadn't signed Kevonte Turpin. So, he would have been active then, and we would have been seeing a bit more of him. But and I think the other thing as well, I think if you look at the number of defensive linemen that we're activating at the weekend, I think Dan Quinn's got a big say that I think there's probably a skew towards the defense, so that they have all these fresh people on the field. That the defensive line that was playing the first drive against the Rams, that obviously Dorrance Armstrong came in and got the strip sack and got the touchdown off, that was a different one that then ultimately on the next drive led to the stop and get the blocked punt as well. So I think there is a favouring of the defence there, that Dan Quinn's getting in a few extra guys. It's maybe meaning we're not having as many wide receivers active. You're having to keep to bring these practice squad elevations. You've got to have 8 offensive linemen active during the game as well. So that's 8 guys that are, when you do the number crunching, you've only got 46 plus however many you bring up from the practice squad. You've only got those that you can activate during the game.
Yeah.
And the numbers are at a premium in this. So, but at the same time, I think it's good that we're storing him. We're not, guys haven't got a chance to scout him so far this season. They've only got what they've seen in the preseason games, which isn't a lot when you're going up against third and fourth strings. When we do activate him, because there will be an injury at some point within our wide receiver core or whatever, or he'll become active, and he can maybe hit the ground running once he's got that chemistry in practice with whoever's throwing the ball to him.
Jay, what do you think about Tolbert? Is it too early to judge? Are the defensive backs in the league just that step up from college? What do you think?
I think if anything, you could to probably try and be fair to him, it's probably a bit of both. A third round pick on a wide receiver, you want to see him getting more involved in games and making these big catches. And essentially had a perfect opportunity. And when you say about grabbing the ball by the horns, but Gallup was out. Washington, although we know what he can do from his time in Pittsburgh, was he really a potential number 2 standout? I don't think so. I think it was there for him to win, and he obviously didn't do that. There's might just be as well that the coaches don't fully trust him yet as well, so his number's not getting called a lot more. I think a lot of the play, something along them lines, will have that to that effect. And saying, you look at two of the rookie tight ends, they're getting maybe some ball that he should be getting. It's an hard one, isn't it? And you might see him on a short leash, I think, if this continues towards the end of the season, because there's some wide receivers, and to name one, Franco, who impressed all the way through camp. At some point, you're going to have to see what you've got with him, because are you just going to keep him around and not? And like I said, you just use him on special teams but when he's shone at the wide receiver position in preseason, so do you cut your losses and go, right, let's see what we got, or do you do you try to trust this guy a little bit more and maybe start forcing balls to him? But that might be better answered when Dak's probably back.
Yeah.
You probably would trust Dak more in that aspect of forcing a ball to see what a receiver can do. But at the minute, I think the jury's out in it, but it's a short leash as well in terms of what this jury will allow this wide receiver to get away with or not get away with, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, for me, it's always too early to judge draft picks, especially when you're dealing with a backup after week 5. I just asked the question because obviously, we did only have 10 completions on Sunday, and but when you consider that he's a rookie, the defensive backs across the league have seen it, been there, done that. He's going to have to find that additional level. Let's give him a couple of seasons, I would suggest. I only raised the point basically because Dak's on the verge of coming back, and are you going to see a little bit more of Jalen Tolbert? Because obviously Dak will go. You would imagine that Dak would go through his progressions a little bit quicker. The accuracy would be a little bit tighter. The range in passing will be much bigger as well. So let's see what happens. To Andrew's question, when will Washington return? So I don't know about you guys, but certainly my understanding of it is around the Packers game, presumably.
At best, I think he's started working with Britt Brown on the sidelines with the resistance cords, which suggests he's maybe on his way back. But I think obviously with a bone break in your foot, you need, and particularly for a wide receiver who's needing to cut on the ball or make cuts to get to the ball, I think you really need that to be 100%. So I think the talk is that he's probably going to start practicing next week, and then you make a decision on the back of that.
Jason, I'm gonna word your question slightly differently, if you don't mind. Who is the biggest disappointment, and could it be Dalton Schultz?
I'm going to say it is, just for the fact that you franchise tag this guy. So for $11 million, you should be getting a hell of a lot more involved in games. And he's just not. This is probably one of the worst. Can you call it contracts, really? Because it's kind of a rent to buy, maybe, kind of, for a season on what it is essentially the franchise tag. So yeah, it's definitely Schultz.
For me, it's arrow down for Schultz at the minute, and he's only damaging his contract worth. What do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, obviously, when you didn't have Gallup, you didn't have anybody other than CeeDee Lamb, who was a known name in this league. Schultz should have been your second receiver as far as it was, and yeah, I suppose to an extent he was when Dak was in. He was Dak's safety blanket in that first game, but since then he's really not done a hell of a lot, and he's been injured, and again the greatest ability you can have is availability. So we haven't seen that this year, and certainly the fact that these guys that are behind him, Ferguson and Hendershot, they're snapping at his heels, and we're getting plays out of them as well. And now this weekend there wasn't a single pass completed to a tight end or a running back, so it was only literally, I think it was 3 players who made receptions, and that was Gallup, I think Noah Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. So nobody was particularly effectual this weekend, but Schultz is certainly, I think, he's not living up to the scratch, and I don't think he will get a contract renewal from us this year.
I think we've beat around the bush enough. Let's talk about the real MVP, shall we? The Cowboys' defense. Is there much more we can say about this group of players?
I know I've bigged up on him every week, but I'm just going to say Dorrance freaking Armstrong, man. This guy gets better week in, week out. Oh, do you know the only thing about Dorrance Armstrong's game on Sunday? And it's more of a, because he deserved it. It's a shame that he couldn't run that block back in, because how he's playing, that would have just topped the season off, wouldn't it? That he blocked it himself, stripped it, blocked it, got it out, whatever you want to call it, and took it back in. It would have just been immense. It's just, I said it at the start of the season that the Cowboys front four as a unit will be the sack leaders in the NFL, and they're just, and I stick by it, man. These guys are causing so much disruption. It's immense to watch.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment they're on pace for something like 68 sacks in this season. If it carries on the way it's going, and that would actually be the best. The best, I think, is 62 from the 1980. I think it was 1985 Cowboys, 1986 Cowboys. Certainly back in the days where you had Everson Walls and Michael Downs in the backfield. So these guys are absolutely performing above the expected level at the start of the season. It's yes, you can say that Micah Parsons now, he's had 3 games where he's been double sack games, but you're getting production from everywhere. And again, suppose we ask the question every week, are we missing Randy Gregory? And I would have to say that the way Dorrance Armstrong, Dorrance Armstrong gave you the same pass rushing ability last year as Randy Gregory. They both got 5 sacks. Now, Randy Gregory was a bit more stout in the run game. And, there is still the run game. I think the Rams actually went away from the run game this game way too easy. But, as far as I'm concerned, Dorrance Armstrong has stepped up again, and he is rewarding the Cowboys for this having the faith in him to sign him to another deal.
Yeah, I think I know we big him up every week, but Micah Parsons just once again showed that he's not human. Like, he pretty much played the last 10 minutes on one leg and still got a hell of a lot of QB pressures. Just dominated that offensive line pretty much on one leg, and it's just like, and I've bashed Leighton Van Der Esch for a while. And to be fair, he quite impressed me on Sunday as well. He had a quiet but steady game. The sky's the limit with this defense. It's just, it's just, what more can you say for a defense that's impressing week in, week out? And we've pretty much said everything we can do every single show.
Where they talk about momentum in the NFL, to start that first series in the Rams' house, which was effectively the Cowboys' house, let's face it, to start that first series with a fumble, that must have broken their back straight away.
Yeah, and a scoop and score fumble as well. I mean, that's, you're putting them in the back, with one, what was it? It was something like 133. So not just over 90 seconds into the game, and you're already 6 points down because your offense has fumbled the ball away and it's been picked up. And, DeMarcus Lawrence walked that ball in. It wasn't a case of having to sprint for the end zone. He walked that in. So that, that is going to be a backbreaker. And just the fact that, we do give up, we gave up 3 long plays, but apart from that, I mean, I think, what was it? Something like the Rams had about 300 yards of offense. but 160 of them came on 3 plays, right? Which means that the remaining 57 plays or whatever, because normally you're at least 60 plays a game. The remaining 57, they got 140 yards, and that just shows that that is a way to shut down. And Stafford looked harassed the whole time. It's a testament to these guys and to Dan Quinn as well. I think the fact that we've got Dan Quinn for a second year, he's learned what worked last season. This isn't the same defense that you're seeing from either when he was in Atlanta or way back when he was a defensive coordinator for Seattle. It's completely different. Yes, there's elements, but it's not anything that you can tie anybody down to and say, right, go back and have a look at that. Going back and have a look at that game, and that will show you how to attack a Dan Quinn defense.
Jamie, talk to us about balance, because the Rams tried to get Cam Akers going. They really did try. 13 attempts, but he only carried the ball for 33 yards. Stafford had 42 passing attempts. We really knocked them off balance on Sunday.
You do, like saying, you're always looking at, don't you, that establish the run, and it then makes that third down pass a little bit more easier. Do you know what I mean? Third and short's always better than 3rd and 10. And that's what the Cowboys, you could even push it to say front seven, seem to be doing this year, is taking that run game away from teams and forcing them to throw. But it's not just one player, which is, I think, what's remarkable about this season, is that in past years it's always been someone like a Randy Gregory, or it's been DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus obviously still playing to a good level, but it's these other guys that are now elevating their game. And I think someone put a stat out the other week on it that Micah Parsons is still he's still playing at a high level, but the stats don't maybe show that as much. But I think that's because teams are getting used to playing against him. But he does a lot of stuff different. So you see the fact that teams will double team him. He's opening gaps up for other players. So other players are thriving on the back of these players, like a DeMarcus Lawrence or a Micah Parsons, and they're getting the job done. And so it's benefiting the team, but it's benefiting themselves as well, because it means that they're going to get more game time. Coaches are going to trust calling their number in players. I just think, and it's the more that they keep playing this, I think the more you're going to see teams not be able to run on the Cowboys, because they're just going to take away that part of the game early, and it's going to frustrate teams, and then that's going to benefit the defensive backs, because they're just going to get a heck of a lot more picks than they've been getting so far.
So, Lauren, we all know it's Halloween season. Will Matthew Stafford be seeing ghosts? 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles.
Oh yeah, I think he will. And I mean, as I say, he was running for his life on that game. He can at least go, right, well, okay, that's that out of the way. And he's only got the 49ers again this season. But I mean, the last 2 weeks, he's been harassed by the 49ers and our defense, which I think, if you look at the stats, are actually 1 and 2 in the league. And depending on who you look at, we're first, they're second, or whatever. So it flip flops there, but he must be thinking, thank God that's over, and I can get back to whoever it is he's playing this week. But I mean, he's talking about concussion protocols. He's lucky he got out of that alive this weekend, I think.
So, Jay, I know we like to stay balanced, or I like to stay balanced on this show. Let's talk about the Cooper Kupp touchdown. do we write that off as it's Cooper Kupp and he's the best receiver in the league? It's Cooper Kupp and he's the best receiver in the league, or do we? From my remembering of it, it was Diggs in coverage. Did we just talk it down to another Diggs being Diggs, and he's going to lose eventually?
I'm not going to lie. The first kind of time you see it when you see it back, and I was sat there and I was just like, it's true about Diggs. He just gives up these big plays, these short plays. But then when you look at it back, and to be fair, Cooper gets a really good jump on him. Comes across the line and he just bursts through.
It's a one-handed grab as well.
Yeah, so I just think it was the fact that a mixture of both, and it's more on Kupp that the fact that he got a great jump on it, and Cooper Kupp's just arguably the best receiver in the league at the minute, and that's why they're paying him all this money to make them kind of plays, and that's what you want to see a CD Lamb do. So I'll let this slide for Trayvon Diggs for this week. If it had been a different receiver, then he might not be getting so much leeway. But yeah, Kupp does that to the most.
Everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the best receiver in the league.
I think the problem as well, just before we came on, Sky were actually showing the condensed highlights as well. So on that particular play, we were rushing 6, and they were empty backfield, so they had 5 guys out, which meant we were man coverage. We didn't have anybody back there, and it's they brought somebody across in motion, which signifies to Stafford that it's man defense that we're playing, and that just all he has to do is look at Kupp and say, right, okay, it's man defense. All you need to do is release off the line, and at least you're going to get 5 yards, if nothing else. You're going to get an easy catch, and it's just the way that unfortunately for Diggs, that is one of the hardest routes to defend. And I mean, we were saying on the other side of the ball that Lamb has had these crossers the last couple of weeks and got good yardage out of it as well. So I think that just goes to show the difficulty. And Diggs never gave up on that play until there was a Rams receiver ran in front of him, and he had to sort of pull back up on that. There was still all potential that Diggs could have caught up to him. It wasn't a case of Diggs not being able to stay stride for stride with him. So
that was clever. That receiver knew exactly what he was doing. It was a great block, if you know what I mean. Like he runs across, cuts off the route, and it makes it so much easier. I'm going to put it down to it's Cooper Kupp, best receiver in the league, like I've said, and like you're saying, it's man coverage, and the way Diggs plays on the edge. That's why he's so good. That's why he gets so many turnovers. Another stellar performance. Again, I never underestimate this against the Super Bowl holders. I don't think we've said that enough tonight. We went into LA silenced. Let's face it, the away crowd. That was a home game for the Cowboys. You could see it. You could see it in the stands. So I think we'll finish off with the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Ooh.
Let's talk special teams. The fake punt. What do we think?
I have to say, I was sitting here watching the game, and I actually, I'd noticed that one of our jammers was actually backing off the line, and I thought, oh, I wonder if they're expecting it. I wonder if they're expecting something here, and but Sam Williams had the wherewithal to actually notice that the pass protector or punt protector had actually leaked through the line. He pulled back as well and just got his arm up, but unfortunately the pass was just over his fingertips. Jody Camillus, who I mean, he was a special teams coordinator for us at one point as well.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember.
You
Still have
talk
sleepless
about,
nights.
I know. You talk about Fassel being capable of running trick plays, but Camillus has a whole arsenal of these as well. And I was thinking we might have used a trick play during the game. It just so happened they had the right call for it, and I think it's one of these things. It takes a lot of guts to make that call. And it takes a lot of things being right, and obviously it's up to the punt protector to actually make that decision whether it's still on or not. He obviously saw something that said yes. It could have been worse. Sometimes you see these fake punts and they do go for 15, 20 yards and the backbreakers. This only went 5 yards, got the first down, but we were able to hold on again, and it didn't kill us. So from that point of view, I'll take that. You're going to give up one of these every so often, and obviously they'll take that. Hasn't killed them, and they'll take that, and they'll be slightly better prepared the next time. So,
speaking of backbreakers, Jay, the Rams fumbled the ball, and then the block punt. Are you ever going to come back from that? I mean, what an awful start to the game.
It brings up one kind of comments in it of it never raised, it paused on it, and it literally it poured on them this weekend. And I think we should bask in the glory, because God, how many times has it happened to us? And so yeah, it's about
more
time
than
it
I
happened
can
to
count.
somebody else.
Yeah, more than I can count.
And I know a lot of people get annoyed that the games get blacked out on Game Pass because of Sky, but thank heaven that it was on British TV for us to see in all its glory, because we can record it and watch it back. with a bit of a Benny Hill theme tune in the background as well.
And our favourite subject in UK Cowboys, 3 field goals, 3 field goals, three made, and an extra point attempt. Have we all ordered our Brett Maher jerseys yet, or are we waiting for another week?
I think we're seeing a completely different guy. I mean, by all accounts, when he was with New Orleans last year, he was 16 of 18 last year. He only played half the season because he had an injury to begin with. But he's been rock solid this year, and I think he's missed on one extra point, there was an extra point blocked by Efe Obada last week against the Commanders. This week, he never even had a chance at the first extra point, because God knows what I think the long snapper was, had a bit of the yips because it was his first game for us, and he's like, I better do a good job of snapping the ball here. But he's been rock solid, and the only kick he has missed that has been, you could say, his fault was the one 50-yarder at halftime in the Giants game, and you're talking 50-yard in that Giants stadium, the ball swirls around. There's nothing you can do. But the main thing you notice with his kicks this year, even when he was converting them in his first stint with us, they were always just coming in through the goalpost. This time he is actually split in the middle.
They were trick shots. They were trick shots.
As long as he doesn't try and do what the Saints did last week,
the crossbar and post,
the double doink, But
look at what happened in the Bengals game. Do you know what I mean? One of these days we're going to get some luck with that one. That one didn't even go over, did it? And they give it
Yep.
So what do you reckon, Jamie? Are we ready to hand out the contract extension yet?
No.
Or will we wait on it?
No, I think you've got to wait. It's more so because he's been a little bit inconsistent throughout his career, hasn't he, as well. And do you really want to be tying someone down like that? And then by all accounts in training camp as well, he clearly wasn't fully accurate, because I think what did the Cowboys, including him, did the Cowboys bring in 4 kickers to compete with each other in training camp? I can't remember the last time I ever heard 4 kickers being in training camp whatsoever for any team. I think he's probably played in at the minute. Let's see how he gets on as the season goes by, and then when he gets to, not that these games aren't important, but you say if he gets to a point where we need a field goal to maybe win the division, or make it to the playoffs, or go through in the playoffs, that's when you start thinking, right, this guy's deserving a contract. At the minute, he's heading the right way, but I think when it's more now, when it's on the line, that's when we need to see if he's really money or how. When we really, really need him in those dying seconds, and it's like I say, it's in Philadelphia, and it's swirling wind, and you've got the crowd. Do you know what I mean? It's hostile as hell over there in every game. Can he nail a 50-yarder as the time expires with all those factors against him? So let's see where it's going. Yeah, positive at the minute, but I'm not throwing all my eggs in one basket.
No, it's a crazy, crazy world, the kicking game. I mean, Rodrigo Blankenship is a free agent. He was Mr. Consistent prior to the 2022 season. I think I read he had something like an 85% success rate, and then all of a sudden he has a couple of bad weeks. I wouldn't say bad, I'd say questionable weeks, and the Colts move on from them. It just proves they are a dime a dozen. Unless you're the Ravens, who've got their guy locked up, you can treat this as a monthly type thing. It's very, very much a form position.
Do you know what? Funny you should mention it. I think Mike mentioned it a few weeks ago on one of the shows. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised, sorry, should I say, that a lot of teams haven't followed suit, because he's easily the best kicker in the league by a million miles. You could arguably say he's probably the best kicker the game's seen in at least 20 years. And they're the only team that's got a specific kicking coach. And it pays dividends. Why every other NFL team hasn't got a specific kicking coach when showing what it can do is beyond me. I think a lot of teams need to take suit of what the Ravens are doing, because it's only going to benefit your kicker going down the line. It's going to benefit your team, because, like you say, with them kind of kicks, it's either a yard wide or a yard in, and that can make or break your season. That can change a game if you're losing, but you need something just to give you a little bit of a boost. And sometimes a long field goal can do that. So let's get on the phone to Jerry and let's get a kicking coaching.
Well, on that note, the backup has got to thank his 2 number 1 receivers. Where are they? They're down there. They've looked after him. They've coached him through on the sidelines, and it leaves me now to pay the bills. So if somebody
Brian, who?
If somebody wants to talk us through Cowboys experience,
go on, I'll do it. So obviously, if you're looking to go to a game this year, or even start looking for next year, get in contact with Cowboys Experience for the ultimate meet and greet, stadium tours, game tickets, tailgating, much, much more. Get to meet guys like Drew Pearson, Micah Parsons, Jay Novacek. They'll look after you. Mention that we've sent you. Mention UK Cowboys, and you'll get a nice little goodie bag as well, from all accounts. Jamie?
Yeah, as we've mentioned over the last few weeks, 2023, we've finally put together a trip out to the Big D to watch the Cowboys play with our good friends and sponsors of the show, Cowboys Experience. That'll include tickets, tours of the stadium and the Star, meet and greets with current and former players in DCC. Now, who doesn't love a DCC, and much more. So stay tuned as the season comes to an end this year, so we can give you some more details. Then once the schedule is out, a decision will be made on the game. But yeah, keep coming back to check with us, because there'll be information where you can pay deposits, etc. So yeah, get his name down, and let's go show Dallas how we tailgate and how we like to drink before a game.
Yeah, make sure you stay tuned for our after hours show, which is called Jamie and the DCC. It's a cracking listen. Yeah, but we'll stay before the watershed in this one. Make sure to check out all the content creators that we love around the world. I know J-Tuck will have an amazing week on Twitter when we're dealing with the Dirty Birds. You've got Bluff City, you've got Big Game James talking Cowboys, hanging with the boys. So much content, great content that's out there at the minute. And make sure you catch our own Mike and Paul on Blogging the Boys at some point. Make sure you check out their website.
Yeah, the opening to this week's the World Team was certainly had me choking, so I won't actually highlight what the situation was there. Go back and listen to it and see if it does the same for you. But yeah, it's great listen. So.
Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us this Thursday. Make sure to check us out again. Make sure you join us again this Thursday, 9 p.m. UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's Eagles week. Make sure you join the guys on Thursday, and thank you very much for joining us this week.
Yep. Have a good week, guys. I'll no doubt be on Thursday because I've got a lot of things to get off my chest about these Boo Birds. So see you then, guys.
Stay safe. Have a good week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Well done to G. Great hosting the show this week, man. Thanks for letting us have a babble.
Jay, the playmakers got us through this week. I just put the ball in their hands and they go and make me the star. Don't you kid yourself on. See you next time.